Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Tomlinson, and welcome back to the channel. In this short video, I want to talk about how semantics can make spiritual conversations, or maybe more accurately, spiritual communications, more difficult. So let's talk about just some basic communication principles and how the brain works when it comes to receiving a message that we're hearing. So language is a very interesting thing because it's all symbolic. There are sounds that we make with our mouths and our vocal cords, and there are words that we write on a page that we do not come out of the womb understanding. We have to be immersed in it. We have to be exposed to it, and our brain begins to eventually, over time, begin to make sense out of these patterns that we call words, these sounds that we call words, these letters jumbled together that we call words are really patterns. But at the end of the day, they are symbols. And they are symbols that represent something that actually happens in our experience. If someone gives you a word and you have no experience with that word, you're not going to know what it means. So you're going to have to ask what it means, or you're going to have to look it up in a dictionary or something like that in order to have a reference point for it. So here's my point. Anytime that you talk to someone, anytime that you write written communication to someone, their brains are busy. Anytime you hear someone talk, or anytime you read anything, your brain is actually doing quite a bit of work with the memory. It's going back into your history and into your past, and it's looking for what experiences, what real life experiences do you have that these symbols, these words, these sounds, these letters represent or represent to you. So let me give you a few examples. If I were to say to you the word apple, or if I were to go a little bit further and say, I want you to think about an apple or picture an apple. And if I did this in a group, then, it's a basic word, simple word. Most of us know it really early on in life because we were fed apples or applesauce. And so we know that it probably represents a food. But our experience will determine the details that we reference. So if you pay close attention, if I were to say to you, picture or imagine an apple, and I want you to really look at that apple for a minute. And then I would be curious to know, what kind of apple did you see? Did you see a red delicious apple? Did you see a golden delicious apple? Did you see a Granny Smith? Did you see a green apple? Or, because of the time in which we live, did you picture a computer or a company or your portfolio or Steve Jobs or something like that? So whatever you picture in your mind is the meaning that you give to the symbols of the words and the letters that you hear or read. That's the meaning that you give. Now, that may not be the intended message that the sender is sending. Now, things like apples can be confused because we use that term to describe a couple of different things. We use that term to describe food, but we also use that term to describe the Apple company and what that may mean to us in our lives. And whichever has more meaning to you is probably the one that you're going to picture when I say, think of an apple, or I say apple. At the beginning of the video, when I just said apple, maybe your mind went to the tech company, or maybe your mind went to the fruit. But again, the details are going to be really different, right? Now, we're dealing with something very concrete. Most of us have some kind of an experience or reference point in our brain for an iPhone, or for, like I said, a portfolio or a computer or a company. And certainly you may have had experience with the fruit, right? But you probably are going to picture the one that you eat the most or that you like the most, as opposed to maybe the person sending the message is talking about something else. So you can see how, with something very concrete that we have real world experience with as a collective, there is room for some misinterpretation. The message that is sent is never in its entirety the message that is received by the person that you're communicating with. But these are very concrete examples. Let's talk about something a little bit more abstract. Let's talk about something like grief. We use grief generally to describe a process that a person goes through. So if a person is in grief, they've lost something. We know that. That's a shared meaning. But if I were to say go on social media or just throw out on here on this video that I've really been grieving something, your brain, your mind is going to do the same exact thing. It's going to go on this derivational search, and it's going to go looking for examples in your life and in your experience of what grieving means. Now, there are at least 5 or 6 stages to grief, and they can be very, very different. We have shock, we have denial, we have sadness, we have anger, we have acceptance, all kinds of different stages and things that people can be going through when they say that they are grieving. So I could jump on social media and I could say, I'm really experiencing grief, or I'm really grieving right now. And in your mind, you might picture someone who is sick to their stomach and is crying and is really missing something or someone. But I could be in the initial stage of grief, which is denial, or I could be in, well, shock probably is the initial stage, probably go through shock. And then there's a stage of denial, there's a stage of negotiation, or I could be. So if I say I'm grieving and you immediately picture someone who's, pouring their heart out with tears and crying, that might be what I'm experiencing. Or I might be in shock, or I might be in denial. I could be in shock or denial and not even able to shed a tear, and yet still recognize that I'm in the grieving process. So the receiver of the message will fill in the blanks and then will decide that that's the experience that I'm having, even if that might not be the experience that I'm having, even though we're using a word that is relatively familiar to us in our lives and in our culture. So this is why we say in linguistics that the map is not the territory. So the word grief or grieving is the map, and the territory can represent any one of those 5 stages. And you, as the receiver of the person who says that they're grieving, has to fill in the blanks, and you'll fill that in based on your own experiences and what you give the most meaning to. Now, let's take this up to a level that's even more abstract. When I was in the church, I came from I almost mixed charismatic and Pentecostal. I came from a charismatic background, and we would talk about the glory of God showed up in a service. So if I were to communicate, again, in social media or with someone from a different faith tradition, like, say, Southern Baptist, I might say we really had the glory of God in the worship service this morning on Sunday morning. And by that, I might have meant that we really had what we would call back in the charismatic days a move of the Spirit. We might have had a lot of people who got touched by the power of God. We might have had some healings. We might have had some signs and wonders. And I would say the glory was really present. But now, if I say that to someone who has no experience with the Pentecostal or charismatic movement at all, and their experience in church is Methodist or Presbyterian or Southern Baptist, they're going to attach a totally different meaning to the word glory because they have no experience or no category or no frame of reference for anything like gifts of the Spirit manifesting or signs and wonders manifesting. So they might think that the glory of God, for instance, to a Southern Baptist, the glory of God might mean that there was an evangelist that came in and preached a message that brought conviction of sin, and we had 10 people give their heart to the Lord, or we had 20 people baptized today and the Lord was glorified, so therefore we had the glory. So you can see how when you're talking about things on that level, they are very, very abstract, but your mind will not deal with abstractions. Your mind will go through the same process it goes through with the apple, or that it goes through with grieving. It will search at a millisecond, unconscious to you and subconsciously to you. It will search for what meanings you give to it based on your own experiences. So any topic or subject that we want to pick, when we are talking about true and real spirituality, we are oftentimes talking about things that are very, very abstract and are meaningful to us based upon our personal experiences. So we use these terms to define our experiences with really oftentimes little to no awareness of the fact that other people may have no experience with that, or may have totally different meanings to those words to define a totally different set of phenomena. So, for example, even the word spiritual, what does that mean? What does it mean to be spiritual? I know there are some people who define spirituality in even academic literature that define it as someone's purpose in life, their why for what they do, their deeper level why, their deeper level value system. Some people use the term spiritual to define gifts that they believe, back to the charismatic movement, that are given by the Holy Spirit. So if something's spiritual, for them, it's the spiritual gifts. For other people, like I said, spirituality means that it's defining your meaning and your purpose and your why. Those are two very different concepts, but yet they all are being defined by one word. The problem is that we don't have enough shared experience that when we put it out there on social media or out there on YouTube or even in a conversation, that people can understand exactly or arrive at the same meaning that we are giving, but we assume that we are both talking about the same thing, even though we may be talking about totally different sets of experiences and reference points. If we talk about, in spiritual communities, we talk about ascension. I'm ascending. What does that mean? It probably doesn't mean that your body is floating up into the sky. It probably doesn't mean that you were levitating, which would be the literal concrete definition of ascending. So if it doesn't mean that, it means something very abstract. What does it mean? Does it mean that you are feeling lighter? Does it mean that you're feeling more joy or more acceptance about your life? Or does it mean that you're having communications from otherworldly places and otherworldly entities? Nobody knows. If we talk about things, even things like masculine and feminine energy, this is something that I know I give a specific definition based on my life experiences to what feminine energy is symbolic of to me and how it manifests, but that could be totally different for someone else. They may attribute totally different meanings to the feminine than what I attribute meanings of the feminine to, and we get into arguments over these things. We get into battles over these things. We get into who's right and who's wrong, and we don't even know necessarily what we're talking about. What am I saying? I'm saying that semantics are important. Semantics are very important, and that we get hung up on stuff and argue about stuff or try to be right about stuff when we're not even communicating, because we're only communicating at the symbolic level, we're only communicating at the abstract level, and we don't know what experiences we're actually referencing. So if you want to be understood, first of all, if you want to be understood, then the way you might think about this is, how does this word that I'm using track back to my personal experiences? What in the experiential realm of my life does this term ascension or spirituality or masculine and feminine energy or higher vibration, what does this mean in terms of my actual experiences in my life? And if you want to be understood, then you'll define that term based on how you understand it, based on your personal references, your personal symbol system, and your personal experiences. Then you can have a better chance of communicating and reaching someone and being understood. By the same token, if you're in a conversation with someone, don't assume that they're using abstract words to mean the same thing that you're meaning. And you can ask for clarification. What specifically do you mean by that? How specifically are you using that term? What experiences or meanings do you have in your life that for you equate to this term higher vibration, or for you equate to this term spirituality, or for you equate to this term of higher vibration or ascension? So if we want to reduce conflict, if we want to be understood, if we want to understand, when we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about very abstract concepts. And it's important that we take the time, that we slow down, that we pump the brakes, that we stop passing judgment on other people and on ourselves, and that we take time to make sure that we're being understood and that we are understanding. So I hope this was helpful for you, this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the end. If you have not subscribed to the channel and you've watched this far, I hope I've earned your subscription. I hope you'll hit the like button, comment, all those things so that we can build this community and we can build this channel. For those of you that are interested and are on Facebook, I have a Facebook group called the New Day Global Community, which is a community of like-minded people who don't necessarily agree on everything, but are open to having these kinds of conversations. And there's also other content and stuff that I put up on that page that is not available in any other format right now. Moving forward into the new year, we're getting to the end of 2023 and we're moving into 2024. And I've got some plans to create some other avenues and formats for experiencing spirituality and doing some things that will hopefully really enhance and enrich your lives. So if you're interested in that, the link is in my description. You can join the Facebook, the New Day Global Facebook family, New Day Global Facebook group, and be sure to answer all the questions, because if you don't answer the questions, you can't be admitted into this private group. So thank you for watching this, and I look forward to being with you again.